Hello everyone and welcome to my craft room, and also welcome to my Marvellous Mothers Day Makes event that I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be posting 4 videos with 4 different Mother's Day cards. Hopefully you will enjoy them and hopefully you'll be able to make your version for your special someone on Mother's Day, whether it's your mum or just a good friend or someone else that you think needs a special something this time of year. So I'm doing this event fairly early because, like most of us, probably you can't see your mum at the moment if everyone's in isolation. But hopefully you'll have time to make some of these cards and pop them in the mail or drop them in their letterbox, something like that. Okay, so what we thought I'd start with today is this first card, which is probably my favourite of the 4. Not that the rest aren't lovely, but I think I like this one the best. It's actually a corner fold easel card, so it's a corner, basically that's the basic card, but inside you have a little cute easel card that actually adds the highlight of the card, I think, and it's really quite sweet and deceptively simple, so hopefully you'll be able to give these a go as well. If you have a look on my previous videos, fairly recent videos, you'll see I've done a whole video just of these design cards and how you can scale them up from this one that's relatively small up to probably a fairly giant one which stands about 15 centimetres or 6 inches tall. So fundamentally, to make this card you have to decide how big you want it to fold flat, or how big you want it to be when it folds flat, because that determines the size of the cardstock that you have to start with. This one is a 4 by 4 inch card, or roughly 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres. So to start this one I needed an 8 inch or 20 centimetre square piece of cardstock. So if you wanted it to be a 5 by 5 inch, you'd have to have a 10 by 10 inch piece of cardstock to start with. And the same with the big one. If you wanted a 6 by 6 inch, you'd need a 12 by 12 inch or a 30 centimetre by 30 centimetre piece of cardstock to start with. Anyway, so excuse me, I'll get started with this one and show you how I've made it. So here we're using the Tea Together stamp set. This is it's a bit getting on a little bit now. It's from the previous annual catalogue, but it's still available. It's quite sweet. It's got a lovely sort of decorative teapot and a lovely cup, and these beautiful flowers as well that fit beautifully inside the teacup and teapot if you want to do it that way. And it's got a Happy Mother's Day sentiment here, which is what we're going to be using today. But it's really sweet and you know, has been overlooked for a long time, so I was really pleased when I thought I could get it out for this particular card. And it's got some framelits that went with it as well, so keep an eye out for those in the old catalogue, which ends in early June. So if you like this, you probably better act quickly. Okay, so I'll just sit myself down. So excuse me if I go a little bit quiet. I sometimes do. So just bear with me. I'm going to make sure my iPad is up with me and that my volume's okay. Okay. Yep, that seems okay, so we'll get crafting. Okay, so as I mentioned, the original card, the one I'm using today, is a 4 inch by 4 inch or 10 centimetre square card. So as mentioned, I've started with a 8 inch by 8 inch or 20 centimetre by 20 centimetre piece of Poppy Parade cardstock. Now the basic folding for these is pretty easy. You basically score your cardstock in half both ways, so into exact quarters. You cut, as you can see here, you cut one middle score to the centre, and then the opposite sides you score them sort of like a couple of bunny ears, which is quite appropriate for Easter, bunny ears pointing down. So it's a score from that centre to that centre, and then there and there. So you end up with this sort of scored and cut square. And then the basic fold then is just to bring the 2 flaps over each other, and then your bunny ears sort of set that, and that's your basic stage shape, like that. So this is, as I say, this is a 20 centimetre square piece of cardstock, so the little stage sort of stands about 10 centimetres high. Cool, so that's the basic shape of this card. As I say, I did a whole video on these not long ago, so if you want to pop back and see more, it shouldn't be too far back in the thread of my business page. Okay, so we might decorate that now. So to go with the Poppy Parade, I have a square of old olive cardstock, and that's going to sit, I think I actually put this one on the top. That's going to sit there on our little stage. I'm going to call that the stage just because it seems to fit for me. So that's the stage, and I'm going to set that there. So that piece of cardstock is basically about quarter of an inch or about half a centimetre smaller than the stage. So there we are. And then I've got some of this glorious Peaceful Moments Designer Series paper with the beautiful poppies and flowers on there. So they're in Poppy Parade colours. So, and that's cut slightly smaller than the old olive, just a tiny bit, like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of a centimetre. Okay, so I might add those now with some glue. Where's my glue thing? Okay, so I'll add my Designer Series paper to my old olive. Moved a little bit. Thankfully our glue lets us wriggle a little bit, gives us a bit of time. Great glue, Stampin' Up glue. If you have nothing else from Stampin' Up, I suggest you try the glue. The glue is wonderful. And then I'm going to pop that on to my little platform there, and just wiggle that a tiny bit to get it in place. There we are. So that's the first bit done. So there's our little stage. And mine keeps flipping open like that. You can see that. It's because the score here isn't tight enough. So just score that one a little bit because I had it folded in the little container. It's not quite. So if I told it that nice, and it'll stay where I want it to stay. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to decorate also our two little bunny ears here. So we're calling them. And I've got the same size, so basically the same size old olive and the same size Designer Series paper that I had in the base, but I've cut them diagonally from corner to corner to form a right angle triangle of each. And those, because of the dimensions of the card, those triangles will fit perfectly on our little bunny ears here, and the same with the paper. So the same size as the paper I used on the base, cut diagonally across to form a right angle triangle, and that fits perfectly on our old olive. So I'm going to decorate those now. There we go, so that one there. I'll put this on one side. There we go. Just firm it down. And then the same for the other side. There we are. Just wiggle it a little bit. And that goes on the other side. And that is basically our stage, or our corner fold card, pretty much complete. So that basically is sort of like a card design in itself. A lot of people might sort of just leave it there, and that would be a beautiful card to give. I'll just show you how it folds in. So it folds with the bunny ears go down, and those two stage bits come up, and then it folds like that. So I just would give it a bit of a practice fold while you're doing that, just so that it folds nice and flat when you finally have it decorated. And there we are. So that's our little stage. I'm just going to pop that aside for the moment and bring in the bits for our easel card. So the easel card that you use with this one, I'm using the layered circle dies. The layered circle dies from Stampin' Up. So I've got 2 white circles, and I've got the matching size scalloped circle, slightly larger, but that's in Poppy Parade as well. So you can see I've got one of those, And I've got something else cut here, and this is probably a little bit trickier to explain, but this one is also scalloped circles, but I've cut them so that they overlapped a little bit and form a sort of 8, or like a little compact sort of shape. So to do that, oh, and I should have left it out, excuse me for a second. Find my circles, here we go. So to do that, and I won't do it because it makes everything wobble too badly, you just get your size that you want, which is not that one. It's probably this one. Okay, yep. You get the size that you want. You get yourself a folded piece of cardstock, which I've got here. You fold a piece of cardstock in half, or like that. You get your die, and you actually pop it through your die cutting machine with a little overlap on the edge there. So you can see, if I bring that up to the camera, you can see there's a little bit of a gap between the edge of the die and the edge of the cardstock. So if I pop that through my, come a little bit closer so you can see it. So if I pop that through my die machine now, I will get it cut all the way around, but it won't cut here. So I'll actually end up with joined circles like we have there. So just give that a go. You don't need too much of an overlap because then your circles aren't, they're a little bit more squished. But you need is sort of just enough to keep them from falling apart. So give that a go. Okay, so this is our main part of our, this is the main sort of part of our easel card. So to finish the easel card, you take this and you basically, the bit you want to be the top, you fold it into the centre and score it. Just press it flat. Okay, so then you've got sort of like a square sort of setup there, just like that. And then this second one that you've cut, the full one, you actually attach that to this little front bit here. Just a little smiley mouth of glue, and place that, line up the serration, the little corrugation parts with each other. And just firm that, so it's only sort of, it's glued to the bottom half of your circle. So then you end up with this sort of setup here, and that's what forms your easel there. So you can see that sort of triangle easel sort of look. So that's basically the easel card, and as you can tell, if I bring our stage back in, it's going to sit there in the centre like that, where we can decorate it. Okay, so with our little things of white, I'm just sort of checking my, okay, I've actually, in mine, I've only used one circle of white, so put that aside, we don't need that second circle. So the one circle of white, we actually pop it on the base there. That's the bit there, so we just pop that on there. Okay, so that is our little easel card. Now the reason, with all the other easel cards that I've done, I have actually put that circle of white on the top there. That's what I've planned for. But if you have a look at how we're going to decorate this one, you probably don't need that white, because we're going to have, it'll be a white decoration on the white, and it'll probably disappear a little bit. Okay, so let's get decorating this. So I've got here, I've stamped and cut the images from the die set that I want. So I've got myself a little teapot, so I've just stamped the images from the stamp set onto white cardstock, or onto Whisper white cardstock in black ink. So that's just our little teapot there. I've also got our little teacup, and as you can see, I have also used, in this little one, I've used the little flower which fits perfectly inside the teacup, and I have coloured that in. I'll show you colouring that one in a minute. So it's basically, the colours are light and dark Poppy Parade and Old Olive. Excuse me. I've also cut out a couple of the flowers from the stamp set. So that's the larger flower there, and the little buds there. So I've got the large flower there, and then I've got another one here. So I'll colour that one in and show you. I've got a couple of little sentiment boxes as well, but I'll bring those in a minute. Okay, so at the moment I will just colour in this little flower, and I'll show you how the blends work. So I've got my light and dark Poppy Parade and my light and dark Old Olive, and I'll start with the Poppy Parade. So with the dark Poppy Parade, basically think where the shadows of the flower would be. So in the corners, down in below, the centre. The centre of flowers is often darker than the outside. Just here in the crevices and things, the bits where the shadows would fall in if this was a real flower. So just sort of use your imagination a little bit. And that's basically where I'm going to put the shadows. Okay, I might bring that a little bit closer so you can see. So that's where I've got the shadows of our flower. So then you bring in the light Poppy Parade and you just basically colour in the rest. And where the edges, and this is the great thing with our blends, where the edges of the two colours are, you just use very small, very light, very small circular motions just to merge the two colours together. So colour in the bits of white and then come back with a very small, very light circular motion, and that merges the two colours together, so you get this really nice sort of merging of light, dark and light, dark into light. I'll just finish that off. So. So hopefully there you can see I've got some really nice sort of shades of light and dark, and it looks sort of gives it a bit more of a 3D effect. So I'm going to do the same with the leaves. I'm just going to put some dark old olives just where the central vein on the leaf is, and then probably a little bit just around the edges that might be a little bit further away from the light. And then I'm bringing in the light old olive and the same thing. Just colour in and merge the two together with very soft circular motions. Cool. Okay, so there's that flower complete, and that sort of joins the other things that I've coloured in as well. So we've got two large blooms, some little buds, our teapot and our teacup. So the teacup is actually going to go onto our central stage, and this is what I said, you don't really need this second white circle, because basically then your teacup will disappear in a white circle of a white. So I think it stands out much nicer on the red. There you can see it much nicer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of our big flowers that we've done, and I'm going to actually put it so that it looks like it's emerging from our teacup, that's sitting in our little teacup. So to do that, I'm going to bring in my just a tiny little Stanley knife that I have here in my craft room, and you could use scissors, but I find the Stanley knife a lot easier. I'm just going to cut very carefully along the front, what would be the front rim of our teacup. Just very lightly. So we just form a tiny little slit. So I don't know if it's so tiny, I don't know if you can see it there, tiny little slit in our cup. And then basically then our little flower will sort of fit down into that groove, and you can just position it so it looks a bit more natural. So it looks like it's actually sitting in our teacup and emerging from our teacup, just like that, but it's actually sort of sitting behind. You can see it's actually sitting into that little cut that I've made. And then you can just glue that. I'm going to glue that onto our little stage here. Just checking my original so that I know that I'm doing the right thing, the same thing. Just into our little stage there, like that. So I'm just going to use glue to do that. So a little bit on the cup, a little bit on the flower. Just like that. Try and make it so that it fits the orientation of our stage. So it faces, it's up and down on the natural closing of our stage area. So there, so like that. So hopefully you can see that. Okay, so that's our easel card practically done. So I'm just going to bring in here, I have a tiny little sentiment box. This is from the Stitched So Sweetly die set, which I'm using a lot. It's got some beautiful dies in there if you haven't seen it before. I'll just find it here. The Stitched So Sweetly dies. Very, very versatile and quite pretty. I'll just show you them if you haven't seen them before. So this is the tiny little one I'm using here. It's got some sort of decorative ones and they sort of fit really nicely in each other. These two big ones here, they actually fit beautifully, so you could use a contrast colour on behind and use the white, and they just sort of suit each other. And it's got these beautiful scalloped stitched rectangles as well. So as I say, I'm using this one a lot for my projects. You'll probably see it a lot even today. Okay, but I've got this small little sentiment box here. I'm going to find the Happy Mother's Day from the stamp set, which I should have had blocked up already, but I haven't. So it says Happy Mother's Day. I'm going to just do it in black on our little sentiment box, and it fits pretty much perfectly. So like everything with Stampin' Up, it's sort of, they're coordinated really, really well. Even the older ones like this. There we go. So Happy Mother's Day. As you can see, it sort of fits just like it was made for it. There we go. So Happy Mother's Day. So the thing with this little sentiment box is I'm going to use it as a stopper, a little footrest for our easel card, just so that it fits, so it sits nicely and sits upright and doesn't fall forward when we don't want it to. So I'm going to pop it up on a couple of dimensionals. Probably, usually a sentiment box this large, I'd probably use one dimensional because it's quite small. But we need this one to sit up nicely, so I'm going to use a couple. There we are, so just one on each end. You could probably put smaller one in the middle as well, just for extra support, but I think those two will do. And you just pick where you want your little easel to, how high you want it to sit, and you just position your little foot stop, your little sentiment stop, just in the right position, just to hold it where you want it. So I want it quite high up, so I'll put my sentiment box about there. Oh. Just to make it straight, firm it down. So as you can see now, that little sentiment is acting as a foot stop, a little catch that stops our easel from falling over, which is really handy. You don't want your easel falling over when you're on display. Okay, so now I'm going to pop that into our card. Now the way to position it so you know that you're going to be able to close your card properly is to make sure that in the collapsed position your easel fits perfectly on that little stage. So if your easel card decoration is too high, even though it looks lovely standing up, the card won't be able to fold flat. So if it goes past the corners of your little stage here. So I know that if I put my easel here, I've got plenty of room all around, so I should be right. Not so much a problem with this card because it doesn't actually depend on any height in this particular decoration, but if you have a look at the previous videos I did where I did a lot of height in them, it was quite important to make sure I didn't go too far, as much as I was tempted to. So just straighten that up with a little wiggle of our wonderful glue, and we've got our easel card in place. That's really nice. Okay, so, but if you're going to have a teacup, you need a teapot. So that's what I've got the teapot cut for. And what I'm going to do is position the teapot so that it looks like it's tipping itself into our pot of tea here. So just like that. So it looks like it's you know, just about to tip into our tea. So the important thing here is do not let your teapot overlap the edges too much, because then your card will be bigger than you anticipate and it won't be able to fit in your envelope. So probably a little bit you'll get away with, because there's always a little bit of wriggle room with envelopes, but not too much. So I reckon I'm probably right like that. so that when my card is sitting up, you can see it looks like the teapot is, you know, is pouring into our teacup. So I'll just glue that on there as well. There we go. Okay, so there we have our teapot, and I've got a couple more little flower. This is the other little flower here. I thought I'd just pop it on our teapot just to give that a little bit of colour, because it is a very white teapot. So I'll just pop it down here. So we've got like a beautiful rose sitting on the table next to our teapot. That's just pretty. And then I've got this tiny little bud here, and I thought I'm just going to pop that just on the front, just under our Mother's Day, logo and sentiment there, just for a little bit of colour on there as well. Glue's just about to die on me. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you like the look of that. That's quite sweet, isn't it? Okay, one last thing, because I often look at these cards and think, well, it's all well and good, but where would I write my message? We all know our message is very important. And I have got one of the beautiful sentiment boxes from, again, this Stitched So Sweetly. This is the large one. So I thought a nice large one would actually give me a chance to write a proper message on this. And I've put the little buds, and again I've coloured those in with the Poppy Parade and the Old Olive. And I'm going to just pop that in the part of the card that actually gets covered over, but that's okay. So I'm just going to, you can see I'm reusing my cardstock. Never waste anything, and I'm going to pop that just on there for our personal message when the time comes. Okay, so that just covers over like that. So there is our finished easel, corner fold easel card. Bit of a mouthful, just perfect for our tea loving, warm-hearted mum who we may not be able to see as much as we might like at the moment. So hopefully you like that and give it a go. I'd love to see what you come up with. So please, if you're brave enough, please take pictures of your beautiful creations and post them over on my business page. I really appreciate it. But anyway, so that one's really sweet. I hope you like that one. So that's the one we've made today, and here is the original from the other day. I actually have set that slightly further back, that one. Anyway, that's fine. They're both, nothing's ever the same in paper. In card making, there's always little variations. Okay, so that is project number 1 of our Marvellous Mother's Day creations, or Marvellous Mother's Day Makes for 2020. Hang around shortly. I'll come back with creation number 2, and hopefully you will join me for that. So thanks again, and I'll see you soon.